She handed me a folder and said, "Once you open this, you can't unknow it. So before you do, I need you to decide, do you want the truth, or do you want to sleep at night?" I chose the folder. My name is Ryan Cole. I'm 31 years old, and 8 weeks ago, my wife of 4 years left me for her boss without saying a word to my face. I came home on a Wednesday evening to a half-empty closet, a note on the kitchen counter, and a silence so complete I could hear the refrigerator hum from the front door. The note said she was sorry. It said she hadn't meant for it to happen this way. It said she hoped I'd understand someday. I didn't understand. I still don't, not really. But I've stopped trying. What I know is this: her boss was 52 years old, owned 4 commercial properties downtown, drove a car that cost more than my annual salary, and had apparently been taking my wife to work conferences that were not conferences. I found out the way most people find out about things they were never supposed to know. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand at 2 in the morning. She was already asleep. I wasn't. I saw his name. I saw enough. I didn't wake her up. I didn't throw anything. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, sat at the table in the dark, and tried to decide what kind of man I was going to be about this. I thought I handled it well. I thought I was being mature. Looking back, I wasn't being mature. I was being avoidant, which is a different thing, entirely dressed in the same clothes. She left 3 weeks later. Officially. With bags and a plan and the kind of composure that told me she'd been rehearsing the exit for months. I cried afterward, alone in the bathroom with the shower running so the neighbors wouldn't hear. That detail embarrasses me now, but it's the truth. And I made a decision a long time ago not to lie about the things that embarrass me. The divorce finalized fast. Faster than I expected. She had a lawyer already selected. That should have told me something. It told me nothing. I was too tired and too sad to read between the lines, and by the time the papers were signed and the apartment felt permanently, structurally empty, I had one thing left to focus on. My father had died 4 months before my wife left. Lung cancer, caught late, gone in 6 weeks. He left me a house, the house I grew up in. A 2-story colonial in a suburb 40 minutes outside the city, sitting on 3/4 of an acre. He also left me a small brokerage account, nothing spectacular, but enough to matter. The estate was still being processed when my marriage fell apart, and somewhere in the fog of grief and divorce, I had signed documents I didn't read carefully enough. I'm getting ahead of myself. The woman who knocked on my door on a Saturday morning, 3 days after my divorce finalized, was not someone I'd ever met. She was maybe 40 years old, dark hair pulled back, wearing a gray blazer over jeans, carrying a leather portfolio like she was here for a business meeting and not standing on the front step of my barely furnished rental apartment. She looked at me the way people look at someone they've been watching from a distance for a while. "You're Ryan?" she said. It wasn't a question. "I am. I'm his wife," she said. And I knew immediately which is she meant. Or I was. "We separated 2 months ago, same week your wife left you, actually." She tilted her head. "Can I come in?" I let her in because I didn't know what else to do. She sat at my kitchen table, placed the portfolio in front of her, and folded her hands on top of it. She didn't look angry. She didn't look sad. She looked like someone who had been angry and sad for a long time and had recently converted all of that energy into something more useful. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to stay calm while I do." "I'll try." She opened the portfolio. The first document she laid in front of me was a property transfer form with my signature on it. My name, my handwriting, dated 6 weeks ago. I had no memory of signing it. The property listed was my father's house. I stared at it for a long time. "I didn't sign this," I said. "I know," she said. "Your wife did." The room did something strange then. Not spinning, not tilting, more like everything went very still and very loud at the same time, the way it does right before you understand something you really don't want to understand. "Start from the beginning," I said. She nodded. Her name was Dana. She had been married for 11 years, had figured out the affair 6 months before I did, and had spent the time since then not falling apart but paying attention. She had hired a forensic accountant quietly, on her own, using money from a personal account her husband didn't know about, and what that accountant found had taken her weeks to fully comprehend. Her husband was not just a man who cheated. Her husband was a man who had done this before. She pulled out a second document. Then a third. She laid them out on my kitchen table one by one like she was dealing cards, and with each one the picture got wider and worse. There had been 2 other women before my wife. Both of them had been involved with men whose assets were in transition, an inheritance, a settlement, a buyout. Both of those men had ended up signing documents they didn't fully understand during the emotional chaos of a breakup. Both had lost money. One had lost property. He targets the circumstance, Dana said, tapping the table. Not just the woman. He looks for a woman attached to a man who has something he can move paperwork around. Your wife was the vehicle. You were the account. I sat back in my chair. My father's estate, still in probate when she left. Which means still fluid. The house hadn't fully transferred to your name yet. There was a window. She was my executor, I said slowly. I named her executor of my father's estate before all of this. When he was first diagnosed, I heard my own voice say it and felt something cold settle into the base of my stomach. I trusted her with that. I know, Dana said. And the way she said it, not with pity, just with acknowledgement, was somehow the least humiliating way anyone had ever confirmed that I'd been played. She closed the portfolio. Then she looked at me directly for the first time since she'd started laying out the documents. I'm not here to make you feel bad. I'm here because I need your help, and because you deserve to know what's been done to you. What kind of help? She was quiet for a moment. The kind that requires you to be smarter than you feel right now. That was fair. What she explained over the next 2 hours was methodical and grim. The property transfer form was not yet registered. It had been submitted but not processed. Which meant there was still time to challenge it. The brokerage account was a separate issue. Someone had submitted a change of beneficiary form that rerouted a significant portion to a holding company. Dana had traced back to her husband. Again, my signature. Again, not mine. The plan, as best Dana could reconstruct it, was to wait until my father's estate fully cleared, at which point the transferred property would be sold and the funds would move through a series of LLCs before landing somewhere untraceable. The brokerage change would take effect automatically upon final estate settlement. I would receive some of what I was owed, enough that it might take me months to realize the rest was gone, but the majority would vanish. How long have you known? I asked. About the specifics? 3 weeks. I've known he was capable of something like this longer than that. Why come to me? She looked at the documents on the table. Because I have the paper trail but not the motive chain. You have the motive chain. You know the timeline of your marriage from the inside. What changed? When, what she started paying attention to, what she started moving around. She paused. Together we have a case. Separately we have suspicions. And you're okay with this? Going after him? Ryan, she said, and the way she used my name steady, no effect. He has done this to people before. He will do it again after us. He's doing it right now, probably. I spent 11 years believing he was a hard-working man who just had a difficult personality. I'm done being understanding about it. I looked at the forged transfer form with my name on it. My father's house. The place I grew up. The yard where he taught me to throw a ball. The kitchen where he made terrible coffee every single morning for 30 years. Okay, I said. What do we do? We did not do anything reckless. That was Dana's first rule, and she stated it clearly at the beginning of every conversation we had over the following 3 weeks. Nothing reckless, nothing emotional, nothing that could be reversed. She had a way of operating that I came to recognize as the discipline of someone who had already made the mistake of reacting emotionally once and had learned from it at great personal cost. She was not cold. She was controlled. There's a difference. The first thing we did was document everything I could remember. I went back through 2 years of my marriage with a level of attention I had never applied to it while I was living it, and what I found once I was looking was a pattern so clear it made me feel genuinely stupid. The conferences that weren't conferences. The way my wife had become suddenly, intensely interested in my father's health in his final months, asking questions about his finances that I had interpreted as caring. The way she had been the one to suggest I name her executor, framing it as a practical conversation, something every couple should establish. I had thought it was responsible. It was positioning. I wrote all of it down, timeline and detail. 3 weeks of my life compressed into a 30-page document that Dana's lawyer described as, and I quote, unusually comprehensive. The second thing we did was contact the estate attorney handling my father's probate. Dana came with me. Not as my wife, not as anything official. She sat in the corner of the conference room and said nothing, but her presence steadied me in a way I couldn't fully explain. The attorney was alarmed. The transfer form was flagged and pulled from processing within 48 hours. The third thing we did was wait. Waiting was Dana's specialty. I was bad at it. I wanted to call my ex-wife. I wanted to call him. I wanted to do something loud and irreversible. Dana talked me out of it every time with the same argument. They don't know we know. That's the only advantage we have. The moment we use it prematurely, it's gone. She was right. I knew she was right. I still wanted to make the call. One night, about 2 weeks into the waiting, I made the mistake of going online. Not to do anything, just to look. And there was my ex-wife, photographed at some fundraising event, standing next to her boss in a venue I recognized as a restaurant I had never been able to afford to take her to. She was wearing a dress I didn't recognize. She looked happy. Not performed happy, not pretending happy. Actually, genuinely happy, and that detail hurt more than the fraud did, which I understand is irrational, but I'm telling you the truth. I closed the laptop. I sat in the dark for a while. Then I texted Dana because she had made me promise to text her instead of doing anything else when I got in my head. Her response came back in under 2 minutes. Go to sleep. Tomorrow, we get the phone records. I laughed out loud. Alone in my apartment at 11 at night, I laughed, and it was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. There was something almost funny about the whole thing, in the bleak and horrible way that some things are funny precisely because they're horrible. My wife had left me for a con man. His wife had shown up on my doorstep with a portfolio. The two of us were now dismantling a fraud operation from a kitchen table in a rental apartment while eating takeout noodles and drinking bad coffee. If someone had told me this was going to be my life, I would have said that sounded like a television show and not a very good one. The phone records came through the attorney. Not my ex-wife's personal records, we couldn't subpoena those yet, but the business line records for her boss's primary LLC, which Dana had standing to request as part of her own separation proceedings. What those records showed was a call log that placed him in contact with a specific real estate broker on the same day the forged transfer form had been submitted. That broker had a history. 2 prior complaints, both dismissed, both involving estate properties. Dana put the phone records next to the transfer form next to the beneficiary change request and looked at me across the kitchen table. That's conspiracy, she said. Not with excitement. With relief. Like she'd been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and had just been able to set it down. I called the attorney that afternoon. He made a call of his own. By the following Tuesday, there were 2 investigators sitting in my living room asking me questions I had the answers to, because I had spent 3 weeks making sure I would. I want to be clear about something. I did not feel powerful during any of this. People tell stories like this and the narrator usually sounds like a chess player, like someone who had seen the whole board the entire time and was simply executing a plan. I was not that. I was a man who had lost his father and his marriage in the same season and had been handed, by a stranger, the information that the grief and the loneliness had also been part of someone's strategy. I was angry in a way that had no clean shape to it. I made mistakes. I said the wrong thing in one of the early meetings, and Dana had to walk back my statement with the investigators, calmly, without making me feel worse about it. I got emotional at a document review when I found an email in my ex-wife's name using my father's name in a way that made clear she had understood exactly what she was doing and had done it anyway. Dana handed me a paper towel. Take a minute, she said. Then keep going. That's what it was, really. Keep going. The arrest happened in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. No drama, no production. I wasn't there. Dana texted me 3 words, "It's happening now." I was in my car in a parking lot outside a grocery store and I sat there for 20 minutes unable to go inside. When I finally went in, I bought everything I needed and one item I didn't. A small cactus on a clearance shelf near the entrance, because I felt that buying a living thing was the right response to the feeling I was having. I still have the cactus. It's doing fine. My ex-wife was arrested at her apartment. Her boss was arrested at a property showing downtown. The broker was picked up the same day. The charges were serious wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit estate fraud. The estate fraud charge carried the longest potential sentence and the investigators, once they had the full picture, made clear they intended to use it. The property transfer was formally voided. The beneficiary change was reversed. My father's house remained mine. I want to tell you that it felt like winning, but it didn't, exactly. It felt like getting something back that should never have been taken. Those are different feelings. One is triumph. The other is just restoration, the world returning to a shape that was always supposed to be its shape, correcting for a wrong that should never have happened. It felt right. It felt necessary. But I didn't celebrate. Dana and I had coffee the morning after the arrests. She had dark circles under her eyes. She'd been up late, she said, handling something with her attorney, but she was composed the way she always was, like someone who had decided a long time ago not to let the difficulty of things show on her face until she had privacy to deal with it. "How are you doing?" I asked. She thought about it. "Honestly, I feel like I've been running a race for 6 months and someone finally told me I could stop." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "Not finished. Just stopped." "That sounds exhausting." "It was," she said. "You were easier to work with than I expected." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a compliment," she said. "Most people fold under this kind of sustained pressure." "You didn't." "I had good company," I said. She looked at her coffee cup. "Yes, she said after a moment. We did? There were still weeks of legal process ahead, statements, hearings, the slow machinery of the justice system grinding forward. Dana and I showed up when we were needed. We prepared. We answered questions. We did not discuss anything beyond the immediate task in those settings, which I think was right. There is a time for everything, and the middle of a federal proceeding is not the time for anything except being useful and precise. The day the plea agreements were announced, her boss taking a deal that would put him away for 7 years, my ex-wife facing a separate trial she was clearly going to lose, I was driving home when Dana called. "Did you hear?" she said. "Just saw the notification." A pause. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I'm sorry about your wife. Whatever she did, I'm sorry that happened to you." I pulled into my parking spot and sat there. "I'm sorry about your husband," I said. Another pause. "He wasn't what I thought he was." "Mine either." "No," she said. She wasn't. We stayed on the phone a while longer, not saying much. Cars moved through the parking lot. Somebody's dog was barking somewhere in the distance. It was a Tuesday evening in early spring, and the light was doing something good outside, one of those late-day colors that makes ordinary things look briefly important. I watched it and didn't say anything, and she didn't say anything either, and for that moment it was enough to just have someone on the line who understood why you would sit in a parking lot and look at the light. "Dana," I said. "Yeah. You want to get dinner sometime?" "Not for anything, just dinner." She was quiet long enough that I started to wonder if I'd misjudged. Then she said, "Yeah, I think I do. My father's house is being rented out for now, while I figure out what I want to do with it. Sometimes I drive out there on weekends, not to go inside, just to see it. The yard needs work. The gutters need replacing. There are things that need attention that my father always said he'd get to, the way we all say we'll get to things, and never did. I keep meaning to start on them. I haven't moved back in yet. I'm not ready. But I don't think I'm not ready because of grief, exactly. I think I'm not ready because the house is waiting for something, some version of me that feels settled enough to fill it properly, to open the windows on spring mornings and cook in that kitchen and make it a home in the way my father made it a home, meaning, consistently, imperfectly, with intention. I think that version of me is getting closer. Dana and I have had dinner 4 times. The first time was awkward in the way that things are awkward when two people have been through something intense together and are now trying to figure out who they are to each other outside of that. The second time was less awkward. The third time we talked until the restaurant closed and we were the last people sitting and the staff were vacuuming around us and we didn't notice until someone finally came over and very politely asked us to leave. We laughed about it in the parking lot. It was a good laugh. She told me on the 4th dinner that she had almost not come to my door that morning. That she had sat outside in her car for 20 minutes deciding whether to go through with it. She said she wasn't sure I would listen, and she wasn't sure she was doing the right thing, and she wasn't sure she was ready to trust her own instincts about people anymore after 11 years of having trusted the wrong ones. "What made you knock?" I asked. She thought about it. "Honestly, I figured either you'd help or you'd throw me out. And either way, at least I would have tried." She looked at me. I was really tired of not trying. I understood that. The choice between staying safe and doing something even when the something is hard, even when the outcome is uncertain, is a choice I've had to make a lot this year, and I've noticed that the times I've chosen to do something have not always worked out perfectly, but have always, without exception, felt more like living than the times I chose to stay safe. I don't know what Dana and I are. We haven't named it. We don't feel a need to yet, which I take as a sign of something of the particular ease that comes when two people have already seen each other operate under serious pressure and have already decided they can trust what they saw. She knows I'm still working through things. I know she is too. We are two people who got caught in someone else's calculation and came out the other side still standing, which is not nothing. It is actually quite a lot, depending on the day. My father used to say that the thing about hard years is that they show you what you're made of, and the thing about knowing what you're made of is that you can't pretend anymore. You know the shape of yourself. You know what you'll hold and what you'll let go. You know which things matter and which things you only thought mattered because you hadn't been tested yet. I know those things now in a way I didn't a year ago. I know I can handle more than I thought. I know that the quiet after chaos is not emptiness, it just feels like emptiness until you put something real into it. I know that sometimes a stranger knocks on your door with a portfolio and a problem and a particular look in her eyes that says she has decided, whatever the cost, not to let this go unchallenged, and the right thing to do is step aside and say, "Come in." The cactus on my windowsill is still alive. Dana says it needs more sun. She's probably right. I've moved it twice. I'll probably move it again. My father's gutters still need replacing. I'm going to do that in the fall. And me, I'm going to be fine. Not immediately. Not in a straight line. Not without the occasional parking lot Tuesday where I sit and watch the light and feel the full weight of everything that happened and the full, surprising lightness of what's still ahead. But I'm going to be fine. That much I know.